Alright, welcome to Pastoral Care. We're going to do your final in this video. So feel free to print this out and have it with you and fast forward and rewind as necessary, and we're just going to work our way through this one. Alright. First one, started off the bat with probably the hardest one. In your own words, list and describe 3 main points for each of the 4 phases of counseling as discussed in the class. Right. So a major part of the beginning of this course, and really through the whole course, has been discussing the 4 phases of counseling. Right. So clarification, formulation, and then your intervention plan, and then finally some kind of termination. Right. So basically what I'm wanting is for you to go through and look at each one of them and give me a couple main points for each one. Right. There'll be other stuff in the final about these, but basically for this one I want you to be able to show that you have a general understanding of what each phase was about. Right. Okay. That's probably your longest question there for this final. Number 2, what is the basic rule concerning confidentiality? The basic rule is that everything should be confidential, right? Even the fact that they're even taking counseling, but the basic rule is everything should be confidential, right? List 3 ways given in class that you can use to keep a client's confidentiality. So there's a few things that I gave you in class. I'll give you a couple examples of what I mean. Doors could be closed to the counseling office so people can't overhear. Being careful not to mention in front of other people. Keeping good track of your records. Not using them in sermon illustrations. That's some examples. Number 4, list and describe 4 exceptions to confidentiality. Right. So a few of those could be a written agreement. Right. Medical professionals might need some information. A court subpoena is another one. If the client reveals he's going to do harm to someone else, suicide, child abuse, those are all exceptions, right? Okay. Number 5, explain in your own words the concept of difference bias. Right, so we had an entire video on that one, right? The basic idea is that when you go into your counseling, you want to counsel them based on biblical principle instead of just trying to make them like yourself, because difference bias is when you come in and the things that you identify as wrong in them are just the things that are different from you, and not necessarily things that are wrong. They could just be different, and so you want to have an appreciation for human uniqueness, right, and not think that anything that's different from you is wrong, right? Okay. Number 6, list 3 situations where a dual relationship must be avoided for a pastoral counselor. So we're thinking things like where there's romantic feelings, where there's power issues involved, if someone works for you, that's a power issue. If it's if it feels awkward, like maybe they're a friend or something like that, you know them from a different context, it's going to make it awkward. Those are dual relationships to be avoided. Number 7, list 5 elements to an office setting that are conducive to counseling. So we went through a bunch of these. Basically things like being careful about your seating. You're going to sit across from them at a desk. Having comfortable chairs, the right colors. You may not want them emerging out into like the main traffic of the office. You want to have somebody close if you needed them, right? You don't want to be just totally there by yourself. You want to have maybe a staff person within about 20 feet of your office that you could get to if you had to. Those types of things, right? You can add other ones if you need to. Number 8, what is a key tactic for eliminating the likelihood of transference occurring? So we talked about transference tends to occur more often if there's a distance that's felt between the counselor and the person, like a quietness. The counselor's not really saying anything, and it opens up the opportunity for the client to fill in the gaps with transference. Oh, he must be thinking this about me, or I know what he's thinking. He's thinking this, I've seen his type before, that kind of thing. So to eliminate the likelihood of transference, sometimes you want to interject some things that make you seem genuine, some personal stories, personal reflections, that kind of stuff, so they don't see you as a stereotype of something. They see you as a genuine, just unique person that they can engage with. So the genuineness, the openness, that's the tactic, right? In your own words, explain the concept of transference. Basically, transference is when the client projects something onto the counselor from their past, right? Something, some kind of attitude, some kind of mindset onto the counselor based on something they've experienced in the past. So their father was mean to them, and you remind them of their dad, so they're kind of guarded against you. That kind of thing. That's transference. Number 10, why is it dangerous for a counselor to insert their own thoughts too quickly into the formulation stage? Right, so what we're after here is just the idea that if they're when you're trying to formulate, you want to let them have a train of thought. Right? You want to let them unload, let their mind develop the thought. Right? If you interact with every piece of their thought and try and insert your own things too quickly, you derail their brain's natural process of opening up and teaching you what they're actually dealing with, right? Okay. Number 11, list 7 of the 12 common roadblocks to listening that were given in class. So on that one, go back in, watch the video. I gave you a list of the 12 most common. I just want you to know 7 of them. Number 12, it is important to think of listening as a sacrifice, right? Listening is a sacrifice. Okay. Number 12, what is the basic 13 rather, what is the basic underlying message communicated when the counselor reflectively listens? It's the message of acceptance, right? Keeping in mind, though, that acceptance is not necessarily approval. You could be accepting of what they're saying. You create an accepting environment where they feel free to tell you, right? But then that doesn't mean that you approve of what they say, because you're still going to later in the intervention stage help lead them out of it, right? You still want to shut them off too quickly by not genuinely listening. Number 14, explain how the concept of communication theory is incorporated into the application of reflective listening. So this is a long one, but what I want here is communication theory is when I was teaching on how I formulate a thought, I try and put it into words, somebody else across the desk is hearing it, and they try and decode and understand my meaning, and through that process of communication theory, meaning is often misunderstood, it's often lost, and so reflective listening allows you to reflect back statements that help to clarify meaning. Right? Okay. Number 15, what is an important word to include when you're making statements during reflective listening? The you part. You. So you seem to be enjoying this final review, right? So you're trying to make statements instead of questions, and you want to start with the word you more often. You don't want to start with I think, because then it's too aggressive, too assertive. It's more fluid if you say you seem to be enjoying this pretty good, that kind of thing. All right. Number 16, what does diagnosis literally mean? So to tell the difference between two things, right? To know the difference between. So gnosis is knowledge, dia is two, so know the difference between two things. Right? Why is it important to be clear about cause prior to formulating a diagnosis? This goes back to the illustration I used of depression. How depression could be what they're experiencing. And that, so that's the thing they come in and tell you about. But it could have 20 different causes. It could be substance abuse, relationship issues, work-related things, you know, abuse. I mean, it could be all kinds of issues that are the cause, right? So once you know their symptoms, you have to be very clear about the cause. You don't want to try and form a diagnosis about their symptoms. You want to make sure you know the cause before you try and form a diagnosis, because what they need for depression depends on the cause. If it's abuse, that's a different form of intervention plan than if it's substance abuse or, you know, something from their past, or, you know, depending on what the cause is, you're going to have a different intervention plan. Alright, number 18, explain in your own words the value and application of personality theory into pastoral counseling. I'm going to leave you to do this one, but basically what I'm wanting is, the personality theory is your things like your Myers-Briggs test, your temperament test, the 5 love languages. I want you to talk about how you see those as being either effective or not effective. What do you see the role of those being, of using those for the pastoral counselor? Number 19, explain the acronym of ABC as it applies to pastoral counseling. So this was affect, behavior, and cognition. Right? So these are the 3 main categories of things that people are going to come in and express to you as far as what they're feeling, what's bothering them, what are their symptoms, right? So affect deals with emotion, so think affection, right? So not affect to have an effect on, not used in that way, but affection to have an effect is your emotional state, right? So they're going to either have their emotional state is going to be bothered. Their B is behavior. That means either they're going through some kind of behavioral problem, and then C is cognition. They're not thinking about things right. They're troubled in their mind, right? And then number 20, list and describe the 4 questions that must be answered to create an effective intervention plan. We're missing D on this thing, so you may have to fill in below that, but so there should be 4 of these. So the basic idea is going to be found in that last video, right, that we did. So the 4 questions are: 1, what is troubling the person? 2, what is causing this? Right? 3, what is missing? Right? And then number 4, what is needed? Right? So whenever you answer this one, you know, fill in all 4. Okay. So what is troubling the person? What is causing this? What is missing? What is needed? That's your 4 questions. I'll let you go back in the video and kind of review that to determine your descriptions. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and you should be just fine with this one.